G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website and YouTube channel Kangaroo Court of Australia. Now, I've just published another article on the $368 billion AUKUS fraud scheme. Now, it adds another piece of evidence to exactly how the scheme's working. It is an important piece because it shows how they control the fraud scheme from cradle to grave. And right at the heart of it is Joe Hockey, former Federal Treasurer. And I'll read you out the article, but before I do, if you're sick of corruption in Australia, government corruption, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification button, and every time I publish a new video, you'll get a notification so you can come and watch the video. And make sure you share the video on social media because that helps spread the word, helps shine the light on the corruption. Now, the article I just published is titled, How Liberal Party Joe Hockey Steals from the $368 billion AUKUS Fraud Scheme from Cradle to Grave, and it's published Sunday, the 26th of January 2025. And it starts off, former Federal Treasurer Joe Hockey is stealing millions of dollars from Australian taxpayers via the $368 billion AUKUS fraud scheme, and he is trying to control AUKUS from cradle to grave via Liberal Party pre-selections, which should be outlawed. It became obvious that Joe Hockey was trying to control the AUKUS fraud scheme and almost certainly other schemes from cradle to grave when his name popped up as a supporter for Giselle Capitarian in the Liberal Party pre-selection battle for Bradfield. Joe Hockey directly lobbies the government for his own private business for contracts valued at millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars and possibly even billions of dollars. Given Joe Hockey makes millions of dollars from the Australian government, should Joe Hockey also be having an influence on who is elected to government? Background to Joe Hockey and his snout in the trough. Joe Hockey has his snout in the $368 billion AUKUS trough via his company called Bondo Partners that is stacked with former Liberal and Labor politicians, such as former WA Premier Mark McGowan and former Minister for Defence Maurice Payne. On Thursday, the 16th of January 2025, as reported before the Sydney federal seat of Bradfield Liberal Party pre-selection that Tony Abbott has backed anti-voice campaigner Warren Mundine over the well-credentialed moderate Giselle Capitarian for the seat of Bradfield, arguing Liberals can't beat the Teals by copying their politics. Her backers include former Treasurer Joe Hockey, former New South Wales Premiers Gladys Berejiklian and Barry O'Fowler and Nick Greiner, and former MPs Bruce Baird and Trent Zimmerman. Others understood to be supportive of Mrs. Capitarian, but opting to stay private with their view include Malcolm Turnbull and Matt Keane. ABC reported Bradfield Party members expect their local member to become a senior minister or higher, Mr. Hockey told ABC. They usually pre-select for the future. They expect their member will be a prominent player. Bradfield is currently held by the Liberal Party's Paul Fletcher, who is retiring on Saturday the 18th of January 2025. It was reported after the Sydney federal seat of Bradfield Liberal Party pre-selection. Giselle Capitarian won the Liberal Party pre-selection for the Sydney federal seat of Bradfield. The former Liberal Treasurer Joe Hockey had also endorsed Capitarian, describing her as having the capacity to be a future leader of the Liberal Party. If Giselle Capitarian is elected to government at the next election, then Joe Hockey has someone in government who owes him favours. And if Giselle Capitarian does become a future leader of the Liberal Party, like Joe Hockey suggests, then Hockey might have a Prime Minister who owes him favours. Breach of the Australian Constitution, ? Most people are aware of Section 44(1) of the Australian Constitution, which says someone can't have dual citizenship and sit in Parliament, which caught out about 15 politicians in 2017 during the 45th Parliament of Australia. But voters are less aware of Section 44(5) of the Constitution, which bans politicians from benefiting financially from their role, either directly or indirectly. That could mean they have a company that gets money through government contracts. Well, a lot of politicians become lobbyists after they leave Parliament, which is not a breach of the Constitution. Joe Hockey has gone one step further, given he is actively and publicly influencing who stands for the Liberal Party in elections for his own financial benefit. Joe Hockey doing what he is doing is really no different than a current politician running a company and lobbying the government for contracts worth millions of dollars, which is illegal under the Australian Constitution. But Joe Hockey is allowed to get away with it, and I think the Constitution should be amended to block the loophole. Joe Hockey also influences Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. On the screen now is a picture of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's Twitter account on the 20th of March 2023, which says, "Good to catch up with Joe Hockey MP, former ambassador to the US, and Richard Spencer, former US Navy Secretary in Canberra today." Why was Prime Minister Anthony Albanese meeting with private citizen Joe Hockey? Was Albo also thinking about his next job after politics? Was Albo helping Joe and his Bondo Partners make a few dollars? Joe Hockey's Bondo Partners published an article in September 2024 titled "The Labor and Liberal Party Politicians Set to Make Millions of Dollars from the AUKUS Money Train, the AUKUS Scam Exposed," which says in part, Liberal Party and Labor Party former politicians, such as Scott Morrison, Joe Hockey and former WA Premier Mark McGowan, are lining up to cash in on Australia's defence spending, which is expected to double and hit $100 billion a year. At the top of the list for greedy former politicians is a $368 billion AUKUS submarine deal between Australia, the US and UK. Bondo Partners. Bondo Partners was set up by former Federal Treasurer and Ambassador to the US, Joe Hockey, and has a major focus on profiting from AUKUS. Joe Hockey has employed former WA Premier Mark McGowan and former Defence Minister Maurice Payne. It says on Bondo Partners' website, Bondo Partners was founded in Washington, D.C. in early 2020 by former Australian Ambassador to the United States, the Honourable Joe Hockey. Joe identified that despite a deep trade and investment partnership between Australia and the US, innovative Australian companies struggle to gain traction in America because of the complexity and noise in the market. At the same time, US firms looking to invest or expand in Australia, often as a strategic foothold in the Indo-Pacific, lack the strategic insights to help chart their course. And so, Bondi Partners, named after the famous Sydney beach where Joe's parents first met, was born to help elevate the trade and investment partnership between Australia and the United States to the next level. With the evolution of AUKUS, a trilateral security pact between Australia, the UK and the US, Bondi Partners' footprint continues to grow across the Pacific and Atlantic. Today we have teams in Washington, Los Angeles, Sydney, Canberra, London and Tokyo, where we partner with businesses which want to grow and invest across allied and global markets. End of quote from Bondi Partners, but there's a link there for you to click on and go to their website and read more. My article goes on to say, Joe Hockey doesn't even try and hide that he wants to cash in on AUKUS. The below pictures of Mark McGowan and Maurice Payne were copied from the Bondi Partners website, which are up on screen now. Joe Hockey's cradle-to-grave strategy. Slowly but surely, all the pieces are coming together in the public domain to expose exactly how the likes of Joe Hockey work to rip off Australian taxpayers for their own greed. Joe Hockey not only has direct contacts and influence in federal parliament via the Liberal Party and his relationship with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, but Hockey also has influence over which Liberal Party politicians get pre-selected and therefore voted into parliament. It doesn't matter who is in government, Joe Hockey and his Liberal and Labor Party employees will be getting more than their fair share from the government of the day via AUKUS and other fraud schemes. If Giselle Capitarian does win the Sydney seat of Bradfield, Joe Hockey will expect favours from Giselle Capitarian in return, and if she becomes Prime Minister, as Joe Hockey suggests she might, Hockey will call in even more favours. So as I said, slowly but surely, all the pieces are starting to be put together so you can see exactly how their fraud scam works, how they control it from cradle to grave. AUKUS is meant to run about 30-odd years, 40-odd years, $368 billion. They'll probably increase that to $500 billion or $1 trillion in the near future. So it's a 30, 40-year scheme they can all run. They can all have their snouts on the trough, getting hundreds of millions of dollars a year for the former politicians. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to help shine a light on corruption, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification button and share this video on social media. And if you want to read up further information with the links, well, make sure you go to my website and read that article. It's got all the links in there with further information. In Kangaroo Court of Australia's independent media, I publish a website and a YouTube channel, and I'm 100% crowdfunded from viewers like yourself, so please support my Patreon account or PayPal account. You can donate email $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, whatever suits your budget, or you can do one-off donations. And the link for the Patreon account or PayPal account will be below this video on YouTube and also on my website. And there's also a link there for the donations page on my website with further donation options. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.